So let me call the meeting to order. This is meeting number 15 of fiscal year 22. Today is January 10th, 2022. The governor's directive is pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted for entirely remote meetings, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means on Westborough TV, Verizon Channel 28 or Charter Channel 192, or on the web at www.youtube.com/Westborough TV. However, in the event we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Any questions about that? Hearing none. First order of business is approval of the minutes of meeting number 14, which was held on December 16th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve, please?
Motion to approve.
There a second?
Bradley, second.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Blumberg abstain.
I'm sorry?
Blumberg abstain. I was absent for that one.
Okay. And
Bradley, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Bradley, yes. Yeah, we got it.
Bullen, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Roush, yes.
Leslie, yes. Rouch, yes. Okay.
Siddiq, yes.
Already, yes. Okay.
We're a lot of practice going alphabetically, apparently. New year.
Yeah, and you get to jump ahead tonight, Andrew, because Melanie is not here. Okay, next order of business is some housekeeping matters. And the first is the calendar that I sent out, which was revision number 2. If you have it in front of you, you can see that I've added remote through January 31st. We will remain remote until and through the meeting of January 31st. And then we will wait on additional guidance for the month of February. If we have to meet in person, we can do so. There's the remote issue was at the suggestion of the Board of Health, and considering that I heard from a few of you that you'd prefer remote, that's what we're doing.
Right.
I'm sorry, Beth.
At the school level, I think they extended it through not Westborough, but the state extended it through February.
That was masking, was it not?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will stay remote. Just to go through the calendar very quickly. There are 2 other remote meetings scheduled, February 7th and March 3rd. And that's because we yielded the conference room at that time to the zoning board of appeals. So we were going to do that, and we will still do those 2 meetings as remote. And then we'll just populate the calendar as we need to beginning in February. Any questions?
Yeah, Michael, the ones that say holiday, does that mean we're not having them, or that it's just a holiday?
We're not having a meeting.
Right, okay.
I've indicated holiday, no meeting.
Okay, I thought I saw that, but okay, thank you.
Right, I appreciate, because the first earlier version, you just wrote holiday, but not the no meeting. So I thought we were having a meeting on the holiday.
Yeah, I think we probably have an older version.
Right. And I believe the town is observing those holidays anyway. So,
well, when we've needed to, we have met on them, but happy not to.
Yeah, I don't think this early that, at least for the first one, that we have to meet. But in any case, so we'll leave it in there as a holiday. We'll populate other stuff as we get into future agendas later on in our agenda. So the other big issue for housekeeping is the liaison assignments.
Mike?
Yes, Walter.
I wasn't done asking questions yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up. I'm looking down at my papers.
Exactly. How solid is the date for the tri-board meeting? Solid enough that it should get the day off yet,
As
or?
far as I know, it's solid.
Okay, so it
I
wasn't.
believe I'm on a plane.
And so my second comment would be then, how much do we want to meet before then? If it seems like we gather a lot of information at that one, maybe. Like I see we don't have a meeting the 17th, but maybe we might not need all these meetings between now and then.
Well, actually, I was going to discuss that when we talk about future agendas.
Okay, sounds good.
So if you give me a chance to get to that point in our agenda, we'll talk about populating
Well,
with,
then we're gonna populate this later.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Roughly
So
what time does the tri-board meeting start on the 27th?
details to follow. I have no idea at this point, Tom.
9 a.m., noon, or 3?
It'll
More like
probably
9
be in the
a.m.
morning.
Yeah,
Probably,
morning.
yeah, and then go right into the afternoon if it follows the format of the last one. Okay. All right. So the next session is liaison assignments. Do you all have your very famous liaison assignments, either in paper format or on the web in front of you? If you could direct your attention down to the bottom where it says ongoing committees with members and representatives appointed and voted. There is one that I know Walter has been telling us about for the last couple of meetings, and that's the Active Transportation and Safety Committee. We have no current liaison to that committee. Does anyone want to volunteer to take that on? Zafar, did I see your hand come up? Okay.
Yeah.
Any others? Any
I
others?
have a question on that, Mike. Is someone from FinCom actually going to be a member, or are they just a liaison like we are to other committees? I'm not sure that there's I'm not sure which it is.
We will appoint. Hank, go ahead. Hank.
Who's the appointing authority?
We are.
No. Any committee that's
sorry.
sponsored by
Yes.
committees that are sponsored have an appointing authority.
Okay.
And if you want to have somebody on a committee, you got to get the appointing authority to appoint them.
Okay.
So is it a committee that was formed by the Board of Selectmen, by the town manager, or just a random committee that a bunch of people decided to form?
Yeah, I have a feeling it's been appointed officially. Hey, John, hang on. John Arnold?
Yep.
Active Transportation and Safety Committee. Is that a town-appointed committee?
First, I've heard of it, but I haven't had time to keep up with all the selectmen's minutes, so I would find out.
It's
I
what
don't know
used to
how-
be
I would
called
just
Bike and Pedestrian Committee. I believe it's town manager / select board.
Okay, yeah, if it's similar to the pedestrian, is it the same thing as the pedestrian bicycle one?
It's replaced it. Because
Okay, so it's a new name for that committee. In that case, yeah, it's probably appointed by the town manager's selectmen. So I would talk to Christy or Karen or Sealer or someone and find out.
So
But what's-
anyway, my point was I didn't know whether it may just be like these other things. We just need somebody tracking what's going on as opposed to having to go to every meeting or being on the committee. I don't know that they were looking for somebody.
Well, why don't we do this? We've got a volunteer. We'll hold his volunteering in abeyance right now. We'll get a clarification on the appointment. We'll get a clarification on the committee and then the appointment. And at some future meeting, if we're going to go forward, we'll vote Zafar as the representative of
I don't think we have ever voted.
it requires a vote. Yep.
Okay, then if it requires a vote, then it's obviously more of a committee than our other liaison positions.
I would believe it is. It's up there with the Capital Expenditure Planning Committee, to which we appointed and voted Andrew.
Well, no, but that committee, I think, specifically says in the bylaws or the charter that a member that is appointed. If it's like
Can
the
I
bicycle
propose-
pedestrian committee, then the finance committee's never had, to my knowledge, a sitting member of that. It would be more a liaison.
Can we nominate Zephyr so that if there's something happening between now and Thursday, he's viable?
Of course we can. We can do anything we want with our members.
I don't think it's that urgent.
Well, if Zafir is volunteering, if there are no other contenders for that liaison spot, then it will be probably unanimous consent that Zafir go ahead and be the liaison.
Right.
Are you all in favor of that?
Yeah.
Okay, just raise your hands, please. Okay. All right. Andrew? Yes?
Andrew raised his hand, yeah.
Yeah, I raised my hand.
All right. Okay. All right, Zafir, you're it, and we'll get back to you.
Okay, the only thing I want to know about is like, do I have to physically attend the meetings or some of the meetings, or just keep up with what's going on, one of the two things.
We'll get you up to speed and make sure that you're using your time efficiently. Okay. When I look at that list, there are some other committees that, I'm not even sure still exist, like the Legislative Liaison Committee and the Waste Management Committee. And Andrew, you were on the pre-K to 3 school building committee. Is that still in existence?
Yes, it is still in existence, but the meeting regimen has stepped back from once or twice a week to we're now doing it once a month. And with our next meeting, I want to get a sense of what the timing is for the meetings around the destruction of the existing Fales building, or the old Fales building, I should say. So we may have a couple of more intense meeting periods as we clean up and do punch lists and that sort of thing. But my availability may loosen up, towards summer, I'm guessing.
Okay, fine. Thank you for clarifying that. And I'll clarify the others. I know the Municipal Building Committee, Hank, you're still on that committee. I know it's
Yeah, they're not meeting very much.
they're not meeting very much. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, okay. I will endeavor to get some more information about those. I thought I had it, but I guess I don't. The second issue is anybody contemplating a change in liaison assignments, or does anybody want to drop a liaison assignment? Okay. Hearing none, we will just leave the existing assignments in place for this calendar year. And if as we go down the road, something changes for one or more of you, just let me know. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is matters of interest for the committee's consideration. At the last meeting, I suggested we might want to undertake a detailed review or exploration of the following: tax rates, excess levy capacity, cash reserve policy, and the budget process itself. Hank has suggested through some of his comments that we start looking at, are we getting value for the school spending, and what's happening with the non-tax levy school spending. And Zafir has suggested that we need to do we need to see a district teacher salary comparison, or teacher salary comparison by district. And Andrew suggested a joint meeting with the school committee, which I'll discuss in a second. So my thinking, and after, Walter really precipitated this for me, it's really not feasible to attempt to do everything in a very detailed fashion. So maybe we should decide on which one in particular, or which two in particular we should engage in or engage on. And focus our attention on that for the balance of the year. I have said from the beginning that we have an affirmative obligation to be well informed. If we are going to be considered a reliable source of recommendation for the town meeting, then we need to keep ourselves well informed. And I think one of the ways of doing it is looking at some of these issues that are bubbling up now because of the latest round of tax or recommended tax increases, and get ourselves better informed about these subjects, one or more of these subjects. So I'll open the floor for discussion. This is a committee choice or decision whether or not you even want to go forward with anything of that kind. And if you do, which one or two or more you want to pursue. Beth?
I'm not even sure if you mentioned it, but I noticed that people in Framingham who have the Community Preservation Act and just recently got it, now mind you, it's only a few people, but they were up in arms about the 1%. They had a 1% fee on their tax bills in order to fund theirs. And it was just interesting watching. I think it was either the discussion on Nextdoor or Facebook or Wise Women of Westborough. I'm not sure which one I was reading, but it was amazing how heated it was when their tax bills came. And so although the Community Preservation Act might be a good thing, I think we ought to do more looking into how does it really affect our bills before we just support it. And that might be something, because I think it's coming forward again. It might be timely.
Is it on the ATM agenda? Is it on the ATM warrant?
I haven't seen any
Right.
any news about.
I was under the impression that they were holding off until a special town meeting in the fall to bring it forward. I agree that we ought to talk about it, but I don't think we ought to talk about it until it's coming forwud.
That's fair, but I thought
we don't have the time.
When it was, but I thought it was like bubbling towards the top.
Well, you know, but well, again, we should see a warrant real soon.
They have asked, in fact, all the warrant articles, the town manager asked that all the warrant articles be submitted to her by today, the 10th. So I imagine we will see a preliminary list of warrant articles soon.
Well, I would suggest we don't want to schedule spending time on things that are not on the warrant or not relevant to what's on the warrant, like the budget.
Yeah, it's true, Hank, but what generally happens is we get into those discussions and they're done based on one article, and we get one meeting or maybe part of one meeting. We never really get an in-depth look at some of these issues that we should have a better understanding of. And
again, I agree, but you need to do it in a timely fashion. I think with the challenge we have of dealing with the expenditures that are coming before us for the annual town meeting, we can't really get involved with many other things. So an in-depth look at things that are not relevant to the upcoming warrant, we ought to put off until summertime or until after March when we have the town meeting.
After the town meeting. All right, we could time it as we wish. Okay, and I do agree with you. If we decide to pick on something that has no relevance to the upcoming warrant, we do it after the town meeting.
Yep.
When we have the time to do it. There are some things that have been, proposed that are very relevant to what's coming up in the town meeting. But I mean, of the subject matter we talked about, is there any one or two or more that strike you as being something, Paul?
I think the first few are the bigger ones. Some of the others are little ones that we can look at on the side. I think like comparison of school thing. If someone else is going to probably do that, but anyhow, the tax rate I think is germane, especially since it's a huge portion of the increase it's at the base of a huge portion of the increase that's been projected. And then I wonder if, I don't know, the other one that's not on here, I guess, is the ARPA funds.
I'm going to fill you in on that.
Yeah, well, okay. Hank provided that great thing, which I want to read more. I mean, it bothered me that they spent money for a consultant and we didn't get to vote on that, and the citizens didn't get to vote on that. I think it was 60,000. So it's probably, I mean, it may be a good idea, maybe not, but I hope there's not more spending like that, I guess.
Well, yeah, just to give you real quick, it was $132,540, and the funding is coming out of the ARPA funds.
Right, but nobody voted for that in the town except for the select board.
Done between the town manager. I mean, the finance team knew about it, but it was the selectmen who initiated the contract.
Yep, and the ARPA funds are under the control of the selectmen. They're not under the control of the town meeting.
So, just
Walter?
I'm just trying to stay on the same topic. I am interested in the tax rate of these sort of general topics that are interesting, because I think it's germane right now, because exactly what Paul said, we've seen the shift of value, and I think it's worthy of an exploration. So I think it is timely. I think it'd be perfectly fine to look at it in the spring after town meeting. It's not the rate set in August. I don't want to, or September. I don't want to put it off till summer, because nobody wants to meet in the summer. And by the fall, we'll be getting ready for fall town meeting. So, I think there's value to picking what we want to discuss, even though we might be saying we're going to look at it in April.
Tom, got an opinion on this?
I'm interested in exploring dual tax rate. Period. But I'm in April could be a great time to do it after the town meeting, especially so we can hit the ground running before any decisions are actually made in August.
Okay. I had a conversation with John Steinberg, and John is willing to come before the committee to talk about taxes and things like the tax rate and assessments, and you enumerate it, you ask the questions, he'll be happy to answer them. He's actually willing to come in. I was going to suggest to you folks that the next, let me just get the calendar here, that we invite Christy and Leah on the January 20th to give us an overview, their perspective on what this is all starting to look like, and their perspective on the warrants that they're seeing, and their perspective particularly about how we are going to manage this town, how they are going to manage this town with the existing budget. They have, if those of you who've read the books, you've probably seen that they have removed all staffing requests from the budget, from the proposed budget. They have gone back to the town managers and asked them to go through again.
Department heads?
Pardon?
The department heads?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. I did say town managers. They have gone, the school committee, if you well, you didn't have this perspective. In the finance committee meeting, the director of finance said that they are looking at the school budget from another perspective. What that means, I can't tell you. He did not elaborate, but they have loaded back in all of the pre-COVID, or I shouldn't say pre-COVID, all of the cuts that were made or induced by COVID. And they've put that back into this year's budget. So, that's a question that will probably be on our agenda to ask when they come up.
Right.
I see Paul looking like, yeah, go ahead.
The tax rate, I just wanted to, the thing with that is that I think there's a bit of groupthink among the assessor, the select board, and town management, that really doesn't allow for, maybe it's a devil's advocate of, thinking of it other than it should be flat. It should be, that both be the same. And maybe it's incumbent on me or us to find that alternative viewpoint, but I don't know that we're equipped to do that. But I mean, I'd love to have someone who had the opposite view, get that perspective, that, because it's sort of like mom and apple pie type of thing, that it should be that way. And, and we'll lose all competition for outside, for new business.
We do have an economic development committee. It has an executive director. He would be the appropriate person to ask to come and educate us as to why a flat tax rate is beneficial in the economic development area and what the potential downside risks are of split tax rates.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's definitely a great idea. I'm afraid, I used to be in a newspaper business where I worked in a newspaper where the rate was really low and everybody loved that because it was easy to sell. And I'm afraid who's going to say, well, I want higher rate because because they know it's going to be harder to do their job. I'd like, I guess I want that sort of.
Who do you have in mind, Paul? Who do you expect to be the advocate for a lower tax rate, for a split tax rate?
That's what.
Where do you expect to find that advocate?
That's why I brought it up as maybe it's incumbent on me or someone else, but
yeah,
I don't know. So I'm just raising it. It's not, to me, it's not just a simple answer to say, well, that's the way it is. Everybody loves it.
I agree, but we have professionals on staff whose job it is to defend why we're doing what we're doing. We ought to ask them to come defend it. All John is going to go tell you is that as the assessor, this is how he does his job. He can't tell you what the impact of that is on commercial development.
Yeah, well, that's true, Hank, but I still think having John come to the committee, Tom, I'll get to you in a sec. Having John come to the committee is invaluable. This is a man that has an enormous amount of information. Tom, and then Zafar. Tom?
I was just going to reiterate, John, where I had a short conversation with him a couple of weeks ago about the Senior Taxation Relief Committee, and he started going down the rabbit hole of dual tax rate and seemed very knowledgeable on the topic. I'm also curious to see, and I'm perhaps volunteering myself to do it, but explore conversations with nearby communities who have recently converted from a single to a dual tax rate just to get their take on it. I mean, we're not the only ones to have considered this. We won't be the only ones to consider it going forward. And we can learn from some of our neighbors who have already had these conversations.
Also, do we have this information about our, we selected dashboard towns, the police, the fire, the school, we're all involved in selecting the dashboard towns. Did anybody take a look and say which of the dashboard towns were single rate versus dual rate?
I think almost all of them are single.
Again, if you ask the economic development director to come back with the benchmark comparison data as to people's level of success in bringing in commercial business in dual versus single tax rates, we ought to be able to expect them to come in and bring that information in. And you'll have somebody to do the legwork and bring you data. And when you have data, you can make decisions.
Okay, Zafar, point taken.
Yeah.
Zafar.
So recently invested more into the Economic Development Committee, being the liaison person. So I went and heard the last 4 or 5 meetings and went through all the minutes for the 2021. They're doing a lot of incentive, trying to bring business in and all those things. But from the minimal, I need to do my research a little more and be more informed before I talk. But one message I got from all that is the percentage of business taxes in Westborough versus the neighboring towns is much less. So we didn't encourage too much businesses because of single tax rate. And a lot of I'm going to do my research first to exactly know which towns have the dual and single rate and what percentage of their taxes are coming from businesses and things like that. So that it's good to invite the experts, come and talk to us, but it's good that I inform myself through my own research as well, so we can give a better informed opinion on that subject.
Okay. Any other comments? So, okay, we need to bring in some experts who have the information. But before we bring them in, I think we have to formulate the questions, or at least the general questions that we want them to address, and then some more detail as the conversation unfolds. But I don't want to be sitting back with John or anybody and saying, please come to our meeting and speak with us about XYZ without being a little more specific. So Hank, you had a number of things that you raised, which I thought were very, very good. Tom, you raised a couple of good ones. Paul did as well. You know, Beth with the dashboard communities. I think if you could each do me a favor and send me those questions and who they should be directed to, I can then begin to formulate a quick strategy to get the right people in front of us at the right time. So if I can count on you to do that, I'd appreciate it. Walter, if you've got any ideas, of course, please do. And then I guess we'll just hold off on John Steinberg until we're comfortable with who we want to have come in. And, you know, if we want to see either the economic development folks defend their position, or we want to bring in someone who has an exactly opposite position. I know one of the selectmen is very interested in this whole issue of single versus dual tax rates. And it would not hurt for us to ask Patrick to come in and speak with us about that. So are you comfortable with that, or are there other suggestions that you might have that we can
No,
follow?
that's good. That's good.
I mean, I think there's a general interest from everybody here on that topic. So maybe that's a good first auxiliary topic to cover this year, as well as, I mean, some of the small things like wanting a teacher cost analysis. I think that's as simple as asking the school committee.
I think the teacher cost analysis will come out of the school department's presentation from the dashboard.
But I don't see, you know, also trying to attack the budget process and excess levy capacity and all these other things at the same time. I think this is
going to be a big one, and I agree with Walter. I think we take on, and everybody, if we've got a consensus around the tax issue, then I think that's the one we take on.
When you say tax issue, you mean specifically single versus dual rate?
Yeah, I think that's the one we have to look at.
Okay, because it's just tax issue is too vague.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Hank did a. You're right, Beth. Hank did a very good analysis of the burden sharing of the residential versus the CIP, and you know, I'll send that information out to all of you. But this is, I think, an important topic. I guess the biggest question that's always been in my mind is, how did we get to this 70-30 split on the single and the burden share?
We'd love to have it. I mean, again, it's a 70-30 split only because we've only been able to get 30% of the assessed valuation into the commercial area with really getting leverage over the commercial properties. We'd love to have it higher. That's why we have an economic development coordinator and an economic development commission. We're trying to get it higher, but it's not easy.
Does that mean that we should be looking at all the TIFs and things like that we grant, and that maybe we're being too generous?
Well, the TIFs do not impact the rate that we're talking about here. the TIFs are, they do impact the taxes because we don't collect as much money. But if you're going to start having dual tax rates, you're going to stop using TIFs. That's one of the downsides. You need to be absolutely stupid to do a TIF and then have a split tax rate.
No, actually, Hank, it isn't stupid because the reason most companies apply for TIFs are not for the savings from the town, but it's a necessary part of getting state incentives. In fact, I know this for a fact from at least the company I work at. They had to ask a town for it, but really it was peanuts compared to what the state does. But part of the state requirement is that the local town does that. And it also, I think they're separate issues. The TIFs aren't huge dollars generally.
I agree, they're not big numbers.
Any other comments? Okay, so I will wait for all of you, or those of you who want, to send me your questions and suggestions of who they might be directed to, and then we'll start working out a strategy. And I guess we're focusing on after the town meeting.
Unless there's a warrant article.
Unless there's a warrant article. But then the question becomes, do you want to see John Steinberg before we go into that town meeting? So
Not going to be real helpful to do that.
okay.
John's not going to tell you anything he hasn't already told you in a presentation he did to the Board of Selectmen. There's not going to be new data till the fall when he gets revised data on the commercial and industrial assessment base. That's part of the problem is we don't know. He's guessing as to what the commercial and industrial assessment will be for FY23. He won't know until late summer, early fall.
It's true. Paul?
So Hank, I would agree with you that there may not be new data to discuss, but I don't know if he's the right person to share questions about mechanisms, because one of the questions I'm going to share to Mike, and so it can be distributed to the right people, is like, what sort of taxing mechanisms do we have beyond just straight residential, and I'm really thinking about getting very creative about this, if it's even possible. But is he the right person? I don't know.
Paul?
The timing is interesting to me too, because they're gonna, they already set it for this year, the tax, the single tax rate, and they reset it in the fall. That's also when, that's right after that is when they, around the same time, with the same numbers, they set the tax rates, and then they catch up on for the first, they recalibrate the bills, so because they can't set it until we're well into the fiscal year, into the fall. So this budget we're voting on in a couple of months is the one that will be mostly affected by any changes to that philosophy. But the thing is, they can't change it till then if they do change it. But I'd be almost more willing, to consider the budget at its current level, knowing that there's a possibility it could be reallocated before the residents have to pay all that. I don't know. So I don't know how clear I'm being, but there is a timing issue that it's not just for later.
Yeah, there's always going to be a lag with from the time the budget is formulated till the time the tax rate is set.
Right.
We're always going to be dealing with that. And I understand I understand what you're getting at. Just for our discussion, the question is whether or not what information we think we need from any of these people before or after that annual town meeting. Do we need information before we go before the town meeting and make our recommendations on the warrant and the overall budget? Or can we wait until after the ATM and then look at this subject, clear-eyed and having a clear understanding of how the town reacted to that particular budget?
I think before the budget, I mean, I think the ARP is like the most pressing thing because it's a new and it's a one-off thing that's particular to like the time period we're in right now. And then you can wait till for the dual and single tax, which has been discussed on and off for 20 or 30 years that I'm aware of in town. We can concentrate on doing that after town meeting as an event.
But it is having a
I don't think much is going to change on ARPA between now and town meeting because they're not going to know.
Well, I know, but as much as we can get to understand it because it's so confusing.
Go ahead.
ARPA will impact whether or not we do certain programs, whether or not we fund, whether or not we agree to include certain things in the budget. Because there are some things that one could include in the budget that you might include them expecting to pay for them out of ARPA. They still have to go in the budget. ARPA is a revenue source, not a spending activity.
That's correct. Right now, from what I understand, you know, the one big thing that's in there from an operational point of view in the ARPA money is the police staff.
And I think there are a lot of people who want that money.
Well, there are a lot of people who want it. There's only so much of it. We've already looked at moving some of the school capital issues into that ARPA funding category. This is why they hired the consultant, because they're not quite sure what it is that they can spend that money on without having to get it clawed back by the federal government later on because they made a mistake. But let's stay with the tax situation just for a moment, or the dual versus single tax rate. I'm inclined to wait until after the town meeting to really get into that. But I still think there's value in understanding exactly what happened, excuse me, this year, so we can have a well-informed conversation with the town meeting. If you know, as we have to. Yes, Hank.
Jonathan's presentation that he did to the Board of Selectmen when they had the discussion about setting the tax rate explains what happened this year.
Okay.
The 7-year analysis that I did shows you how this year is different from the past 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Did we all see that? Did you all see Jonathan's presentation? Okay, well, if you haven't, please go back and look at the select board meeting.
And then we don't have to see that again. I wouldn't ask to see, I think we know if we saw that, where it came from.
Right.
More a philosophical or whatever the word is, you know, theoretical thing that.
Right. Can you send out the, I mean, I hate to ask this, can you send out the link to the correct portion of the select board meeting with his presentation?
I can send the link out tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. So let's take a look at that and then we'll decide whether or not we need more education and information from John. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other? So just to wrap this bit of the conversation up, you all are going to send me questions and suggestions as to who you might want to have a conversation with, and we'll sort through them. We'll formulate a strategy, and we will start looking at the single versus dual tax rate right after the annual town meeting, understanding that it might impact the fall's decisions. Is that fair? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I don't like just putting it off because it so impacts the budget we're voting on. If there was
Paul, I don't see there's any way that we know whether it would change before next fall. Anyway, you can learn about it, but that decision doesn't happen till the next town, you know, the special town meeting kind of time frame.
Well, for me, yeah, I know. And just finding out that it's one selectman at least has raised it is very encouraging to me because it's been such a rubber stamp in my mind. Not that anyone didn't, believe, but I don't mean it that in a negative way, just that everybody thought that it made sense and didn't challenge. So I like that. So maybe it's just, it does affect the tax rates that will pay for that budget. So I don't know.
Look, let me add this and see if the whole issue of taxes and tax rates is bubbling to the surface right now because of this year's budget. This is going to be a subject matter. I've already gotten phone calls, and I'm sure some of you have as well, from friends and acquaintances who live in Westborough who say, what's going on? I think if we explore this particular issue out in the open, as we will, clearly we get a full explanation. We hear the pros and the cons of the argument. At least the citizenry will have the opportunity to be well informed about this issue, and it will at least either put it to rest for a while, or it will force a more serious conversation about whether or not it should be changed. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I think it's the best we can do.
Yeah.
I think our plates are pretty full.
Oh, they will be, I think. They will be. Okay, so you'll all send me questions, and I will follow through on some of these other things that have popped up to see what other information I can get and see if we have any comparisons to other towns, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, next on the agenda is the liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports? Walter.
Okay, Library Building Committee, just update you that there were 12 firms that applied to be the owner's project manager, the so-called OPM. And we all read their proposals and met and voted to narrow that field to 3 for further discussion or interviews and reference checking and things like that. And so this month we're proceeding with those interviews and hopefully selecting someone. We are also meeting with the architect to discuss the cost estimates and new cost estimates, and also arranging a meeting with the MBLC, which is, I think, the sponsor of the grant, to see what options exist. While we are very doubtful that more money would exist because of the way the grant does, whether we'd be allowed maybe to change the scope of our grant due to the large change of costs might be an option or something, because they're going to hit this with lots of the communities, and part of their process has been a long delay between sort of approval and getting the money, which means things can change a lot. So anyway, there's a lot going on there. We have a bunch of meetings, and we're trying to address the issues that were brought up.
Any questions of Walter?
Less a question than a suggestion, maybe. Walter, do you guys intersect with Steve Durrett at all on the library committee?
Do we intersect with Steve Durrett? Personally, I haven't.
Okay, well, I ask because
but
he's
I
been
know
part of.
Yep. He was involved in. I think some of the people have talked to him in terms of our selection of OPMs and things like that.
Oh, okay, good. I suggest it just because he's been involved with school building committee for several decades, yeah, and has had numerous instances of picking OPMs. And whilst I've done a couple, I would look at him as a tremendous resource for suggestions and things to look for. If you guys if they're already getting that from the benefit from the library, then no further suggestion.
Okay, yeah, I believe he's actually even a reference on one of the people being considered. So,
anybody else? Walter, I have a
great
question.
idea. Yeah.
So two things. I understand that the library is coming to the annual town meeting with a warrant article with respect to setbacks with regard to the property. Are you aware of that?
No. I'm not aware.
All right, well, that will be an interest if that's the case and there is a warrant for the setbacks, it's going to be interesting to see if that gets approved by the town meeting. And the other,
I suspect that's a zoning article.
Yep.
And it may be sponsored by the planning board. It may be for but the setbacks and zoning tends to be planning board stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got this from the finance team meeting. Yep. The other question I have, Walter, is somebody working on that Plan B on that building committee?
Well, that's what I just said, Mike, was we were looking into the other options, one of which is whether or not any of the grant can be redone to be something different or not.
Okay.
Which is partially, I guess that's part of a Plan B in a sense. And then certainly be working with these people on what our options are.
Okay. Misunderstood you. Thank you. And the state ARPA funds, I also picked up at the finance team meeting that it would be minuscule if we got any. The state has $175 million from the ARPA money for capital projects throughout the state, and some of it may be available for library construction.
Yeah, so my understanding is that it is library construction is one of the things that it could be spent on, but I didn't bring it up because it's still in the very preliminary looking at thing. I'm not, I know that they're in touch with like our legislative delegation and looking into it, but there's no definitive amount or number, but I mean, even several million could be significant. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any other liaison reports? Okay.
We're going to hear from school committee soon enough.
Pardon me, Beth?
We're going to hear from the school committee soon enough, I think.
Yeah, well, we are going to meet with them, actually. So let me bring you up to date. Andrew suggested in our last meeting that we, might want to meet with the school committee. I followed up with Kristen. She and I communicated today. The school committee is interested in having a meeting with us in a retreat format. And it will be elected committee and appointed committee, no participation by members of the school administration or the town administration. We just be the two committees trying to identify the issues that are always of concern to us, where we overlap in our interests, and have a general discussion so that conversations are not always as potentially confrontational as they might be. I think it's a good opportunity for us, and thank you for the suggestion, Andrew, for us and the school committee to have this kind of conversation, to forge a better understanding between the two committees so that at least when we hear things like a major cut in this year's budget will affect the students and families, that we understand why they're thinking that way. We put it into a different context than we're generally used to hearing it in. So I think it's a good opportunity. And Kristen and I agreed to work out some of the details. I spoke with John earlier about, the technical issues of having it posted and when we're going to do it and so forth, and how much time we're going to take. And I think, I think it's a real good opportunity for us to really understand their side and for them to understand our side. Comments, questions?
Yes, Mike, there's Beth and I met with the school committee, with the school administration. There is a very good presentation that gives you, it's like a 15 or 20 slides, goes over the budget. So there's 3 or 4 key ones that indicate where all the spending increases are coming from. If you have not had a chance to look at it, you probably ought to before you get into. I mean, if anybody who hasn't taken the time to go through that presentation, you'll get much more value out of your interaction at the budget summit if you've seen that ahead of time. It's a very good presentation. It's fairly clear and obvious where all the spending increases are coming from.
Tom?
I was just going to say where to find that, if there's a specific.
If you go to the school committee website,
Yep.
the school committee, there's a section on presentations. There's like four budget presentations. You want the last one.
Thanks, Hank.
You're welcome to read all 4 of them, but the last one's the one that.
Yeah. So historically, Amber presents the budget. Like the first one is really big on the enrollment figures and that type of thing. And she sort of builds it so that you see what's happening. Typically one is a lot of the requests that then get cut, so that you can see that it's not like everything they ask for is coming through.
Mike, for this summit, is that thinking more long-term or for this budget? Or both?
Which, you talking about the budget summit or this thing that we're talking about the school committee?
The school committee meeting, co-meeting, yeah.
No, certainly we can explore some of the thinking behind the budget, but if we get into too much detail on the budget at that meeting, I think it's just going to confuse things. I think we ought to leave the budget issues for when and if and when we meet with Amber and Kristen in the normal course of our business.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I really do think it's a good opportunity to understand each other more. So, let's see. Let's let it unfold, and I'll get back to you guys on it. The other thing with respect to ARPA from the finance team meeting, the company is called Clifton, Larson and Allen. Apparently they're doing it for a number of towns. They're going to look specifically at eligibility and regulation. I think it's probably, all things considered, a wise choice rather than have to deal with clawbacks.
But there's no guarantee of that, I'm sure, right?
There's never a guarantee with the federal government.
No, I mean of their competency in determining that.
I think from what I understood of the discussion that was had, they are highly thought of in the municipal community at large in terms of their ability to deal with these kinds of regulations. So,
because it's great insurance if it is that, but if we later find out, well, we made mistakes too, it's the first year for all of us, then I'm a little suspicious, but
it could be painful.
I hope it'll help.
I know.
They can tell you where the snakes live, but they can't tell you how to kill them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Never heard that one before, Hank. That's good.
I've hired a lot of consultants before.
Yeah.
I wrote that one down.
There's always something good that comes out of these meetings, right? Something usable. Okay, so that's it as far as the finance committee is concerned. The town finance team is concerned. Any other items? Liaison issues? Okay. Moving on, future agendas. I suggest to you that we get invite
Yeah,
Christie and Leah in before that January 27th meeting.
Well, and Mike, what would the purpose of that be?
I would like to hear from them a little more of a broader perspective of their perspective of how it's going to be to manage this town with, under the proposed budget in fiscal 23. I'd like to have that opinion. We always tend to get, when we get into these budget issues, we always tend to get lost in the weeds. And I'd like to hear from the two people most responsible for the fiscal management of this town, how they feel about working with the budget that's been proposed. And I would ask the same question of the superintendent.
And I think for the town manager, for the town, the non-school, they're still looking at mitigation measures too, right? But I haven't seen anything on, if there is anything going on, I'd like to know that.
Well, we're talking about things like, and I'll just give you an example. It came up at the meeting. We had a town day for the town folks to bring their contaminant materials to the DPW. I forgot waste disposal.
Hazardous waste day.
Thank you, Andrew. Sorry. Hazardous waste day. And that was cut. That was in the original budget request, and it was cut. And so apparently they're going to now bring it forward as an article for the warrant. We're talking $30,000 to $35,000. So are they looking for ways to mitigate? Are they looking for ways to put things back in that people of the town really want? We haven't had one of those hazardous disposal days for quite a while.
2 years.
So I'm just using it as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So they are looking for ways, continuing to look for ways to mitigate. Okay. I want to get more. I would suggest to you, I know I'm going to meet, I hope next week, with the police chief. I want to hear his take on how it's going to be to manage that department with the current staffing and to do all the things. And they do things very well in this town, the police department. Just look around you, and I think you get that understanding. That's my personal opinion. But I want to understand from him beyond just the numbers. And I think I would recommend to all of you to go to the departments you liaise with and ask them that question. How do they feel it really is going to be to manage under this proposed budget?
Mike, that's a great point. And I think, so it's more like philosophically almost, or.
Yeah, it is. There is but it's real, Walter.
But just even how they feel about it is important to how they treat their jobs and how they approach their jobs.
And if they're thinking about leaving as a result of stress.
I doubt they'd tell you that part.
Right.
But Michael, on the police department, actually, I did remember a liaison question. I just saw something, a community advocate about a Westborough police car being hit. I'm wondering if it's the last one they're just repeating, or was another one hit this weekend or something?
I haven't heard, but I'll find out.
Because we're going to run out of cars.
We're going to have to
I don't know. It was on a community advocate post, and it was dated January 10th. So I thought the other one happened
I think there was another. I mean, I heard about the first one, but I think January 10th there was another big issue that involved multiple towns.
Well, I'll find out. See what's what. I mean, maybe we're going to have to start recycling DPW cars back into the police department.
They're going to start driving.
electric
Better
cars.
answer.
10-wheel dump trucks.
You know, somebody made an interesting comment about, all that traffic that got backed up down in Virginia in the snowstorm last week. And of course, some of you older folks like me probably remember the blizzard of 78 when 128 was a parking lot for days. And if we go to all electric vehicles, can you imagine being stuck with no chargers? That's good. That's something that might have been exposed here. But anyway, just the thought of the electric vehicle came to mind. Okay, any other issues that you folks want to bring up this evening? Okay. So in terms of next meeting, I think we can skip Thursday. And I will invite Christy and Leah to the meeting of January 20th, which is Thursday, a week from now. Okay. Tom?
Two kind of general questions after reading through the budget. I was curious when the AFC's part-time admin assistant is going to be here. Still made it in the budget, but the actual real question one was payment in lieu of taxes from Mass General Brigham. I'm not sure where I should do more research on that.
I think you should hang on until we find out if it's going to show up.
Yeah, it turns out it's a really complicated process because like UMass Worcester has a say in whether or not Mass General Brigham can move into Westborough because of competing hospital issues.
That's a certificate of need issue, and it's governed by the state. And I believe the state has agreed to issue the certificate of need.
Okay, I hadn't heard that yet, but I knew that it was a hang up.
But I mean, I don't understand the question on taxes in lieu of. I mean,
I don't think they'd be paying that for several years anyway, because
it won't be
until the building's built.
I mean, it shows up as an other revenue item on the revenue side, right? There's a whole list of other sources of revenue that are not levy, that are not tax levy, and they're all listed off in the recap sheets that Leah does.
So it's just because they're a nonprofit, like Harvard University pays money in lieu of taxes to Cambridge, right?
That's what they're doing. They're there, and it's one of the things that's a positive piece of the agreement to get them to move into town.
The Attorney General, I don't know if you saw the last Selectmen's meeting, or 2 meetings ago, sorry. Attorney General issued a letter which really challenged the determination of need that was submitted by Brigham.
Okay.
And she footnoted in that report, or in that letter, that she really hadn't taken into consideration any of the Brigham issues, or Brigham argument for making that or for putting that facility here in Westborough. So she basically challenged the DON. And I know the selectmen were really upset with that and had drafted a letter back to the Attorney General. And I believe that they approved that letter and it went out. That's my understanding right now.
There was also legislation pending that would really lessen the chances that it would happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is as a lay person, I'm just looking at it and seeing a very, clear political decision going on here versus
Exactly.
a need for the potential patients and customers, if you want to call them that, in Westborough or in the surrounding area. Walter?
I was just going to ask, while we're on other agendas, do we intend on the Monday, the 24th meeting, just because you'd have to post an agenda before we meet on that Thursday. So we might want to decide now whether we're meeting that Monday, the 24th.
Oh, the 20th, sorry. Yeah, I looked at the calendar. I saw Thursday. My
No,
apologies.
Thursday is the 20th, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking the following Monday is we have a meeting. If we want to discuss now, if we're going to have it, just because you have to post that before our Thursday night meeting.
Thursday's Monday is Martin Luther King Day, the 17th.
No, we're talking about the following. Hank,
The 24th.
24.
Oh, the 24th.
Or should we just wait and do the full day?
Not a lot of
thing on
value in
Thursday?
not a lot of value in having a meeting a couple of days before the budget summit.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, we will be able to make a determination after that meeting on the 27th as to really who we want to start seeing, to go through the budget process. Okay, so we will skip this Thursday, the 13th. We will not have a meeting. We will invite, Monday is a holiday, the 17th is a holiday, so no meeting scheduled anyway. We will not meet we will meet on Thursday, January 20th, and I will invite Christy and Leah to come in and chat with us about what we discussed.
I'm sorry, did I miss this? Every year the school administration has come in to present what I also saw at the school committee meeting, but I don't know that or will that be part of the Tri-Summit? I'm not sure if we're going to get that, or if it's on us to review that, or have already seen it.
We usually have them come in after we have the budget summit.
Okay.
So that we can better ask questions.
Yeah, the budget summit will give us we'll get a lot of guidance out of that as to what, and that will inform what we want to do going forward.
But if there are a lot of, we always spend a lot of time on warrant articles. If there are a lot of them, it seems like those are going to really be compacted, the time we spend on them.
Yeah, well, we don't know what they are. We may have, articles that we could deal with rather expeditiously. Obviously, we're going to want the school committee or the school folks in sooner rather than later, given that they're 47-48% of the budget, the overall budget. So, and I think after the 27th, we'll have a good understanding of it. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your participation tonight. Thanks for the candid comments. I think they're helpful. Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, please.
Digi, second.
Okay. Discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Beth?
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Olin, yes.
Hegel, yes.
Roush, yes.
Digi, yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Beretti, yes. Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
week.
Thank you, Westborough.
Thank you.
team. Thanks,
Happy
Aiden.
New Year, all.
Happy
Hey,
New
John.
Year.
Do you want to stay on for just a